Well, hello and welcome to the Waking Up Spiritually podcast. We're so thrilled to have you here. I'm Wendy Rose Williams, and I am a past life energy healer. And I have the gift of helping people release energy that's not serving them anymore, whether it's chronic pain, both physical and emotional, anxiety, depression, or just feeling stuck, like you cannot get that energy moving. And my website is wendyrosewilliams.com. And I'd like to introduce Greg Kirk, my wonderful co-host, and he's going to introduce a very special guest that we have today.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Kirk. I am an energy healer as well, also a Lyme disease advocate, and also help people with physical treatments for Lyme disease. Also advocate for people with Lyme. I run a foundation called the Ticked Off Foundation that helps patients stay on treatment. It helps them with financial assistance. And I also run a online group healing circle every Sunday and a monthly fire circle in Connecticut. So do group energy healings as well as one-on-one sessions. And you can come to my website at gregkirk.com. That's spelled GREGGKIRK.com, and click on the events button or the appointment request button to reach out to me about those things. So yes, Wendy, I'm going to pull up this presentation now.
Perfect. So while Greg is pulling up our PowerPoint, so we do our podcast both as a visual as well as auditory, and we go live on YouTube, and then everything is recorded and saved on our website, which is wakingupspiritually.com. And for those of you who like to look at the podcast, we thought we would make it more interesting than Greg and I as two talking heads. So we also have it as a PowerPoint. So I am so excited to welcome today a wonderful friend of mine, a friend of many years, Nels Rasmussen. And Nels is from the Healing Ministry for Animals. And he is a third generation chiropractor and founder of the Healing Ministry for Animals, which is a private membership association. And Nels has helped me many times with my animals over the years, and just beautiful, amazing work. He closed his chiropractic practice in 2016 to do his spiritual energy healing work, which he calls neuroenergetic balancing with people and pets worldwide via phone or video calls. And he works from his home office in Kuski, Idaho, long-term contributor to radio shows and podcasts. Most notably, Nels has been on Martha Norwalk's Animal World every month for over 10 years. And he was a co-host on the weekly broadcast of Mystic Radio for Past Lives, People, and Pets for 3 years. And both shows are live call-in programming with spiritual healing and insight for the brave callers. And the best way to learn more and get in touch with Dr. Nels is through his website, which is healingministryforanimals.com. And you can also find a growing library of videos. He has over 60 videos on YouTube at Healing Ministry for Animals, where you can see Nels working with the animals, and it's pretty amazing to watch. So let's bring him on, Greg, and just get into the conversation.
Here he comes.
I know we have lots of animal lovers in the audience, so that's why I thought of doing this topic.
Hello. Yeah.
So
Nels.
welcome, Nels and
There's him.
Nels.
There
There we
he
go.
is.
Okay, I see audio coming on. I see video coming on. So welcome, Nels. We're so happy to have you here with us.
All right. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. So, Nels, could you just start us off by walking us through what some of the services are that you offer to animals and their people? Because I know
Yes.
they can be mirroring between the two. We've definitely seen that. And also, kind of start us from the beginning. How did you first learn that you had these gifts, that you were able to help animals, and how did it all start? Was there like a certain case or anything that comes to mind?
Well, that's a good question. Boy, and maybe too many questions at once.
Fair enough.
But here's for the kind of services I offer. First of all, with animals, I do a lot of video calls where I get on a call with a person and their pet, and
Okay.
usually, the pet has a problem like they're paralyzed or digestive issues, something like that, and they've generally been to a veterinarian, at least one, usually several, and they're still not getting what they need, so then they start looking on the internet and they find me, or they're talking to their friends, and somebody says, "Oh, I know this guy. Try him out." And so what I do is get on a video call and I actually guide them to touch the animal in specific places, like I would be doing. I would be putting fingers on certain spots, like the neck and on the back, and holding until I feel a pulsation that's connecting these points, and that at some point I can just feel it's all smoothed out. That's connection is made, and we move on, and we just find as many of those as we can, clean up the energy flow patterns in the body, the communication systems, and then wait and see what happens as the body starts to function in accordance with its original design. So usually it takes several, especially with a paralysis case, takes several sessions, anywhere from 4 to 8 sessions, to really start seeing some big results, but it happens a
Absolutely.
lot.
The minute you said that, I thought, oh my goodness. So, for example, it might be a dog who has like hind level paralysis, as an example.
Yes, dachshunds particularly. Most people are aware that dachshunds have long backs, and for whatever reason, they seem to injure them frequently. And some of them actually do need surgery, but a lot of them don't. Even though they may have been diagnosed as having a herniated disc, uh, the reason I find out, of course, is that the people can't afford the surgery. And so they're looking, is there any other way? And then they find out about me, and, you know, a thorough program with me to help correct an issue like that's probably between 10 and 20% of the cost of a surgical procedure. So,
Right,
most people who can't afford the surgery could afford me. So that
right.
makes it a nice thing for them. And
Fantastic.
the healing too is when they heal from the inside out. I think it's going to last a lot longer than when they cut them open and do some internal manipulations, whatever they are. Uh, it's so much less invasive, and that's a
Right.
wonderful thing.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, certainly there's a place for both. So what I'm hearing you say is you might occasionally be hands-on with the animal yourself if it's someone right in your local area.
Right.
But for other people who are interested, you're able to do this via the Zoom call, and then the owner is becoming kind of the surrogate healer, so to speak, and you're telling them where to place their hands.
Yes,
What I'm hearing?
just a few days ago, I finished up with a woman who had a large dog, a Newfoundland, that had a neck problem. Now they have huge heads, so it might make sense that they could get a neck problem because they have such big heads. Anyway, this dog, for whatever reason, he could hardly pick his head up, and he would yelp. And he'd been doing veterinary care for a while with different medications, and basically keeping him quiet, and it just wasn't getting the job done. And she found out about me from her daughter, who I'd helped several of her dogs with some issues. And so she said, "Mom, you got to try him out." And so after it took about 8 sessions to really get him thoroughly done, but now he's just like he used to be years ago. So it's great.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. That's a really big deal because just for our animals to be able to have that quality of life for longer, it's just
Yeah.
really a big deal.
And the thing is, here's a woman who herself doesn't have any known healing ability, but with my guidance, she could put her hands on these specific points, and her husband's holding the phone so that I can see exactly what she's doing, and I'm getting her, okay, yeah, keep that one right there. And as soon as a person hits the point, I feel it. It just hits me right here, and I can feel, oh, that's the one. I get Somebody says, "What does it feel like?" It feels like yes. That's what it feels like. So I have them hold the point. I'm virtually holding it as if I had the animal in my presence. And then we find a second point and the same thing. We guide them to touch those. And then I just monitor for when the pulsation happens that indicates that those two have reconnected and reset. And then we move on looking for more until we're done.
Mhm. Do you ever work at this point remotely with pets to heal them and not have it be a Zoom call? Because you and I haven't worked together in years, and I realize your practice may have changed. And it also depends on the owner's belief system. But
Sure.
what you and I used to do was I simply would email you what the issue was and pet name, age, and a photo, and you just took it from there.
Yes, and I still do that. I call that various things like pure remote work. But yeah, that's I get the information from the person and then and the photo, which is important. And oftentimes, if we can, a video of whatever is going on.
Mm,
And then I sort of bring that animal into my presence is what it feels like, and I'm working on it as if it's right here with me. And when I've cleared up all the energy points, I let them know what I basically kind of a synopsis of what I found. If there was anything I can actually relate, because it's a lot of it's not really something you can relate really well. But,
mhm,
if I can relate them some information, and occasionally I give them that. And usually, just like with the other way of doing it, it takes several sessions to really clean everything up and get the animal back to functioning normally. But
mhm,
this is what I do when I'm on various radio shows that I've been on for the last several years. Is that kind of work instead of guiding people, because that would be a little more difficult in a
right,
radio format.
right, right. So for instance, when you're on Martha Norwalk's Animal World, as an
Yeah,
example. Mhm.
right.
Fantastic. And when does that air, Nels, if anyone ever wanted to listen to that or call in when you're on that program?
Right. If a person wants to call in, then they would need to tune in on the second Sunday of each month. And it's on Sunday morning from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific time, or noon to 3 Eastern. And people can tune into the show. They can stream it. The easy way is just go to marthanorwalk.com, and then you can actually stream the show from her website. And it's also it is a live radio broadcast on KKNW in Bellevue, Washington.
Okay.
So they
So
can
for
tune in
listeners,
if they're local to that
if
area.
right, if they're in the Seattle area. Yeah,
Right.
because I've called you on the radio program, as well as you've done multiple things for I had my wonderful long-lived kitty Midnight lived
Yes.
20 years, and you did some wonderful things for him that were very energetic. They were very spiritual. I knew there was something funky going on because I was experiencing it and was seeing it in him, and it wasn't something that was appropriate to take to the vet. And I want to be clear, I really respect what veterinarians do, and I know both of you do. Also, my daughter's actually a veterinarian, but I can't take my cat when I'm seeing this bump on his nose and I'm meditating and I'm hearing energetic implant.
Mm.
That's not something I can take to the vet.
Yeah, right, right. Yeah,
And that bump went down. I mean, after that one session with you, that bump went down. And I mean, the cat was much more comfortable. And it just was, you have to trust yourself and trust your intuition, what type of healer your animal needs.
yeah, and the thing is people say, "Well, wow, you must know what's wrong." Well, actually, when it comes to like a medical diagnosis, I don't really have a clue. Uh, that's if you want that, then you need to go to the vet first. What I do is tune into the energy, find out what's not working properly, and get it reset back to normal, and that allows the body to start doing what it does normally when it's healthy.
Mhm. And what does a reset look like? Are we talking about like the fight or flight reset? Can you tell us
Yeah,
more about that?
there's well, the best way to say it is years ago when I was fairly new at doing this kind of work energetically, I noticed that virtually every animal I worked on pretty quickly into the program of care. They would, and I mean like the first session, they would start to visibly go from being agitated to calm, often yawning. Some even fall completely asleep. You know, it just, you can tell that they're having some kind of experience that's resetting their fight or flight system. And I started paying attention more to just what I was doing and what order. And I found out there's a couple of points in particular that usually are the main reason that their system hasn't been able to reset itself out of fight or flight. So we get those reconnected, and then people can help their animals to reset from their fight or flight system, which if you think about it, if you're running from a tiger or a bear or something, you're not digesting your food, you're running. And so a lot of conditions that relate to the digestive system not operating properly could be constipation, diarrhea, poor appetite, those kind of things. It's their fight or flight system is blocking their digestion from working
Mm.
properly.
So it's
So
like they're stuck in fight or flight. So
yes,
therefore, other secondary systems that are very important can't work well because they're
right.
agitated and they're so you might be seeing like a dog that's just like barking and just very, very agitated.
Well, it's interesting because frequently they do sort of display some kind of anxiety or something, but there are those that you wouldn't know it by looking at them that they were
Okay.
stuck in fight or flight. Uh,
Okay.
it's more of if you just think about, okay, if they have a digestive situation and the veterinarians have done their thing and it's still not helping, chances are the underlying reason is their fight or flight system, which always takes precedence over everything else because that's survival in the moment. That's what that's
Right.
about. Um,
That is
it's
keep you
just stuck.
alive.
Yeah, we got to keep alive until, we're safe. And if that switch doesn't set back, and frequently for various reasons it doesn't, then that animal's going to experience something that, is not going to be its normal health pattern.
hmm hmm That's so interesting. And Greg, let's let you jump in. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, Nels, I'm fascinated by how you develop this technique where you work with, you know, the pet and the pet's owner, and how, kind of pinpointing those spots because, well, I'm an energy healer as well, and it sounds similar to stuff I do remotely, but not with another person involved in actually touching the spots. That's fascinating to me. How did that get started?
Yeah, that's a great question because when I was initially doing the work, like what Wendy experienced, I was just tuning in, bringing them into my presence, doing the work as if they were with me, and energetically getting them rebalanced. It lacks the additional feature of sensory input into the brain, which can be critical, particularly for things like paralysis. There's a nerve system component that often needs to get reset as well. So probably in the wee hours of the morning sometime when I'm thinking about, this problem I have, which is how do we get the touch thing going? Because I'm working with people across the country and in other countries. And what I came up with is, hey, now we have these video calls.
Mhm.
Let's just start, let's try this out. Right.
Right.
So, with some relatives and whatever, I would just try it out. Let's do, well, you do the touching, I'll do the guiding. And it worked great. So, yeah, that's how I developed it. It just kind of came to me. I'm sure it was one of my early morning epiphanies.
You
So
use the technology.
the wonders of Zoom, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's so basically you kind of worked out it in a test bed situation with friends and family before you tried it out.
Yeah, and I have also done it because I've always lived kind of out away from society a little more. I just prefer being out in at a distance from big cities, and so internet isn't always my friend. And back when Zoom was just first starting up, I didn't have a good enough connection to do video. So I actually developed a chart where I would send people a chart in an email and say, I'll tell you to hit number 5 and number 7 or whatever, you know. And then they would put their hands there, and then I would focus in and I'd say, okay, well, you need to move your left hand just a little bit closer to the head until I got the yes. That
Right.
feeling that tells me it's working, right? And then I would do the other one. It's very cumbersome and slow that way. The video is much better.
Right. Well, it's fascinating. Right when you mentioned a bad connection, you froze. So
Oh boy, you got to be
we
careful
won't
what
talk
you
about
talk about.
It
we
came
won't talk
back.
about that anymore.
I use Starlink now, and it works great.
For
There
the
you go. There
remote
you go.
locations. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. That's wonderful.
So Nels, you also work with humans, right?
I do.
Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that and how that got started.
Okay, well, my technique, which I call neuroenergetic balancing for animals, actually grew out of a technique developed by Dr. Mortar, a chiropractor. It's called bioenergetic synchronization technique, or BEST. So I first learned how to do BEST, and then after I'd probably been doing it for about a year, I developed an idea of how I would do this with animals, because every technique I've ever used, I've always converted to working with animals. So when I had a test case, it was a horse that some people who I'd worked with many times on their horses, they said, oh, you know, we got a horse, you need to come out and do your thing. And at that time, I wasn't doing this kind of work. Uh, well, I went and I did a couple other techniques I had used over the course of several weeks, and the horse was absolutely no better. And I thought, well, this is the time to try this idea I've been having out. So I started doing the work the way I would if I was working on a person, which we'll get back to in a moment. And lo and behold, 15 minutes later, the horse walked away normal. And
Wow.
it had been three-legged walking for almost a month at that point. So
Mhm.
that's when I was convinced, okay, this is something I need to do more of. Well, now with people, um, the best technique is generally done as a hands-on thing where you go into a chiropractor or massage therapist or whoever has learned how to do the technique, and they do the touch points, and it's all done in person. I'd been reading some things by Deepak Chopra, and I can't remember who else, but basically I started realizing that, you know, it is all energy, and energy communication is instantaneous anywhere. Um, Maybe I could do this for people and animals, even at a distance. And
Because
so
it's all in the field.
right. It's all in the field. So once again, it was just with people, I get on the phone and we talk, because a lot of people's issues are based in their emotional responses to the things that have been happening to them in their life. And they cause physical responses in their body. So they have a health issue that actually relates to how they incorporated the feelings of the moment, usually under, you know, a big stressful situation, and it has just totally screwed up their energy. So now I come along and I say, okay, well, think about something that you've just been thinking a lot about, something from the past that's always on your mind because you really can't figure it out. That's why it's always on your mind. And they think about it. I tune in, and using essentially the same kind of approach as a best practitioner would if you were in their office. It's called subconscious questioning. I'm able to quickly tune in, find what the interfering feeling is, which, you know, might be anger or fear or, you know, something like that. And then what I do is, which is a slight variation from the technique, is we find the positive vibration that is going to level out that negative vibration. And then we substitute that vibration. I have them think a thought, hold their breath, turn their eyes a certain direction. And usually within about 10 to 15 seconds, I'll feel that pulsation that indicates that they have reset on that particular issue. And so most of my sessions with people, they take about 20 to 30 minutes to get them thoroughly reset. And most of the people who come to me now are people who they saw what happened with their animals and they're like, could I get some of that?
Nice.
That's wonderful. Now, do you see any correlation when you're treating someone's animal and they're having trouble with their right hind leg? Do you ever ask the person, how's your hip doing? Or
Oh,
do
that's
you
a
just, oh,
beautiful question. Yeah, because human to animal transference is a thing. Yeah. It doesn't generally work the other way, has been my experience. It's generally the humans, they have issues. And again, most of them are emotional in nature, causing a physical problem. And our pets are very tuned into us, much more than some people might think. Even the aloof cat that doesn't appear to care one bit about you, uh, they are very tuned in, and so they're bathed in our energy all the time. And if we have a dominant feeling in our system that's causing a fight or flight response, they are they are aware of it on probably several levels. Some of them, I'm sure, consciously, a lot, all of them unconsciously, and they have to respond to that vibration that they're bathing in all the time. So they end up frequently displaying similar problems to what the owner's got. And so that's why when people see me help their animal, they say, now, how about me?
and that's so great because it's taking it back to what can often be the origin point.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting too. I've got several friends that are animal communicators and healers in a different way than you do, and if there's something more acceptable for people who have not had energy healing before, but they just want to help their animal. So that's often the way they start is
Yeah.
with getting the help for the animal because they haven't been able to find it other places. And then, like you said, it's like, hey, can I have some of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
So
what are the range of animals you work on, Nels? And I well, and then I'd love to hear, I want to hear some fun stories, you know, like
Okay. Yeah.
some of the highlights of what, you know, some good healing stories.
Right. Well, I got started, excuse me, with the animal work mostly on horses. I had my own dogs, my wife's English pointers in particular. And so, working with them, I developed some techniques, chiropractic type techniques, and then extrapolated that from dogs to horses. Started seeing tons of horses years and years ago. Just it's amazing how many people wanted their horses worked on. And then I started moving into the energy work. And at that point, I started being more attracted to working with people's pets as well as the horses. And and maybe for my own convenience, because at that time I wasn't doing this work energetically and remotely, I actually kind of gravitated away from the horses because I was driving around to barns all the time and, spending a lot of time on the road. So I thought, people, they can put their animal in the car and bring it to me real easy. So that worked out great. I started doing more and more animals using the energy techniques. And so, some of them I would go to their houses. I would do a route, and I don't know if I ever came to your house or not, Wendy, but
no, we did
yeah,
all remote. The very
yeah,
first time I drove to you in Darrington, coming to you for my own chiropractic, and then we
right.
started doing remote chiropractic, and then we started doing the animal remote.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I would go around. I had a route that I would do on Tuesdays and going to people's homes, and the rest of the time I'd work in my own office or as I got more and more busy with the remote work, sitting in my office while they're in their home. So anyway, a story which was really interesting was this woman had a greyhound, and she would go walking on the streets around her house. It was getting close to the 4th of July. Well, she was just walking by a house when somebody lit off one of those things that's got a zillion different things come out all at once with whistles and bangs and everything happening. Well, her greyhound totally went ballistic at that point and just turned and ran for home. And she held on to the leash, and she had the scars that blew it all over her face when I went to her house. Her dog hadn't gone outside in a week. He had refused. He says, I'm not going out there anymore. It is just not safe.
It's
And
war.
Yeah, yeah. He said, I'm staying here. That doesn't happen when I'm here. So she'd had to set up papers by the door because he wasn't going to go to the bathroom outside. He was not going. So she heard about me from a friend, and I went and I said, I said, this was a big trauma for you both. So I've got to work on you both. And she said, great. I know I could use it. So I worked on her, and then her greyhound, got to see how that all was. And I could visibly see him relaxing already. So he was feeling the shift already. And then I finished up working on him. And then I went about my day, seeing several more people. And when I got home, there in my email was a message from her saying, about 2 hours after I had left, the dog had gone over and started scratching on the door and said, I need to go out.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's the fight or flight, perfect example of being stuck in fight or flight. And I worked with a Vietnam vet who, uh, was just, you could just see him. He was just sad. He just had this horrible, sad face on all the time. And I was working on a woman's horse, and this was a friend of hers. And she said, "You think you could help him?" And I said, "I don't know." She says, "Well, I'll pay for a session." So I I did my work on him, and I got a message from her the next day saying that he lived in a group home with a lot of other people with PTSD, and he had come down the stairs and he was whistling a tune, smile on his face, and there's like a live-in nurse there, and she's like, you couldn't believe it. She had never seen him do anything like that. And he called up his friend and was telling her all about how good he was feeling and how happy he was, and it was just beautiful to hear about that.
That's a big deal. It really, really is. And there can be past life components to this too. So it's so wonderful when you're able to reset and relieve that energy for people. Because that greyhound, the minute you told me about him, I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a war dog. He just had multiple lifetimes where he served in wars. So when he heard that, it wasn't just this lifetime, the total fear of it. It was multiple lifetimes of it not being safe outside because it was
Right,
war. So
right.
um just being able to reset that energy, that's so beautiful.
Nels, do you feel like sometimes, especially with dogs, I feel they feel their role is to take care of their companion, their owners, whatever you want to, I don't know what the right word is,
Yeah.
but they're people, right? They
Yep.
they feel that it's their job to take care of their people, so that sometimes they energetically will take on things um, for their people, emotions, whatever,
Yeah.
fears, and that is the cause of their some of their infirmities. I mean, is that something you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a call one time from a woman, actually, and she had been referred by her veterinarian, which happens on occasion. But her veterinarian, I'd actually worked in his office, and I don't know why he had me reset a dislocated cat's tail. I figure as a veterinarian, he must have had that course, but he didn't. And I knew I could do it. So he took care of everything else with it, putting the animal under anesthesia, and I reset the cat's tail. Well, it saw that I could do something different than him, and I'd mentioned some of the other interesting work I had done. And so when this woman had this dog and he had examined it, uh, and it seemed like it was in pain. It just sort of stood around and shivered a lot, and it had this kind of a pinched look on its face, but it wasn't like you could poke it anywhere and get a response, but it was very unhappy. And so the vet did, what he could do to try to figure it out. And he said, there might be a tumor somewhere. It's all I can think, but it doesn't show up on our regular tests. So she had me come and I worked on the animal. And his name was Max, a little schnauzer named Max, beautiful little guy. I worked on him twice in the course of about a week. She wasn't very far from me. And when I was done with the second one, I said, I just feel like this is totally bouncing off. I've never encountered anything like this before, but I just don't feel that I'm going to be a solution for you. And I knew when I said that, that was like death sentence, because he was, he was in such misery, and, she knew she was going to have to put him down. So here's the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. 3 in the morning, I wake up, and Max is on my mind. And I'm thinking, well, I'm pretty sure that she had him euthanized that afternoon. And so I remember my mentor, Dr. Mortar, had said, when things are strange or you feel like you need some insight, he said, just be thankful for something you don't think you should be thankful for. So
Hmm.
I thought, well, that's interesting why that would pop in my head right now. So I decided I was going to be really, really thankful for Max, and being able to meet Max. And um, so my technique was I went back to when I was a kid, and it was Christmas, and it was just wonderful, and I was so thankful and happy. And I got that feeling just really strong in my body. I could really feel it like I was there. And then I just took that feeling and I put it right over the image of Max. And immediately I felt like I was levitating off the bed. And I mean, I just felt like I'd totally filled up with light and was just floating. It was a bizarre feeling. And then I also had this thought pop into my head. In this state, I can ask any question and get the answer. And the only question that came to mind is, what about Max? Why couldn't I help Max? And what I saw is like a quick little movie of him coming into this woman's life as a puppy, and he took a darkness from her soul. Happens every time I tell the story.
Yeah.
He took a darkness from her soul into himself, and that was his job. That was his spiritual job, was to do that. And so he had taken that into himself, and ultimately it developed a condition. We think it was probably a tumor of some kind in his system. And what was interesting is then the rest of his story happened. I saw him after he was euthanized zipping around the house, and he was still there with her, and he was so happy because he had fulfilled his mission.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was talking about, taking on the slings of arrows, and hits from the humans' lives, and they sign up for it. They're like,
Yep.
I'll take the hit. And
What
Yeah.
it feels
what
like their duty.
beautiful, beautiful mission. My daughters, when we had first moved into our home that we custom built in Kirkland, and we'd built a two-family home with my mom, and my promise to my daughters was, when we get into the new house, you can each get a rabbit, because they'd been asking for rabbits for a long time. So they each got their rabbit. They chose a different one. And Tara, my older daughter, who's now the veterinarian, her rabbit, even though it seemed very healthy and we'd chosen it carefully, came from a great place, that rabbit died very suddenly. It was only 3 or 4 years old, which is really young for a rabbit in captivity that's getting great care, because I mean, they can live 10, 12 years or
Sure.
beyond. Died very suddenly. She found it, and just, so I've got this sobbing teenage girl, and she was about 15 or 16 at the time. And so, we took it to the vet to be cremated, and, just did everything we could to have a little service and say goodbye. But what I found out is that rabbit, its job, it specializes in helping young people determine what their career should be. And she decided on that day, I'm going to be a veterinarian. I want to know what happened to that rabbit. Is there anything I could have done to have helped it? And I found
Yeah.
out later from a wonderful animal communicator. I didn't tell her any of the details, but I said there always seemed like something very remarkable about what happened with that rabbit dying so suddenly, and with my daughter. And she said, "Oh my goodness." And she's the one who told me, that rabbit had reincarnated and was a dog not far from me, and it was with a young girl and helping her decide what her occupation was going to be. So the
Wow.
animals can have specialties. It's just amazing what they
Yeah.
can do for us.
That story reminded me, I did work on some rabbits for you too, didn't I?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Have you, any exotic animals like, snakes or non-traditional
Oh,
house pets?
that's a wonderful question. I don't do a lot of it by any means, but I have a friend, a person, a client who I've known for decades now, and she's always been working ever since she was a teenager, probably when I first met her, uh, working with the wild animal rescues. So they're working with you might say the exotic animals. And she has on occasion convinced her other people who run the place to have me come over and do it. And I would just do it for fun, really, just to try to see if I could connect and do something. And there were a few, it was amazing to me how they actually accepting these wild animals like owls and squirrels, how they were accepting of me doing my work on them, even touching them and doing the work. It's like they very quickly realized this was a good thing. Um,
They know intent.
yeah. I was surprised at that because I was kind of worried, especially with an owl that could like take my finger off or something. So anyway, I didn't help the owl, but the squirrel. The young woman told me that that squirrel, which had a very bizarre kind of, it kept falling over, like its balance was all haywire, and nothing that they were doing medically seemed to be helping. So whatever I did seemed to reset that, and the squirrel went on to have a good, happy life after that and was living in somebody's backyard.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
That's wonderful. Is there anything you can think of, Nels, that would be helpful to people to know what they can do for their animals themselves, to be recognizing something's going on and something they can do as like a starting point, and also when to know when to call you, and kind of what's that tipping point?
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned a little earlier about the fight or flight thing, and that I do in my membership program that when I work with people, they have to join my private membership association. It costs $10, so it's not a big expense. I do free webinars once a month, and one of them is called the Rasmussen Reset. It's just how to reset your pet's fight or flight system. And this is an actual a Zoom call like this where I will allow as many as 12 people to come in with their animals, and we get on the Zoom call. I go through some basics of what you need to do to help your pet with this energy type work, and then I show them the couple of points that help to reset the fight or flight system. And I actually run a little video showing me working on a couple of my dogs and one of my cats, so they can get a good idea of what that's like. And then I check them out, just where I watch them do it, and when I feel that they're on, I say, okay, now you've got it. And so, yeah, I do these programs, these workshops, and that's a great starter thing right there is join my association, and you can do that. You can also, if you want to, you can buy the full video course. That's a $50 thing, but even just joining and doing a free webinar is actually pretty good. And uh, I've had lots of great comments from the people who've taken that. So it's a great place to start.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, absolutely.
What's the
Wonderful.
what's the single one, number one suggestion you would make, Nels, to, advice or whatever for every pet owner? Is there one thing you would tell them about their pet, that might help them have a better relationship with their pet?
Hmm. Well, the first thing I would tell them is don't overfeed your animal.
Okay.
I see way
That's
too many fat, sick animals.
right. Good.
So,
Yeah.
so that's one anybody could tell. It's kind of a common sense issue, but people, they love their animals so much and they want them to be happy, and they give them way too much treats. So, keeping your animals slim is really important. Now, to move it out of the realm of just, you know, a practical day-to-day kind of thing. Um, you know, you can, even if you don't have any chops as a communicator, an animal communicator, if you uh, visualize and can sort of communicate with words and pictures to your animal, a lot of times they really get it. I don't call myself an animal communicator because the things that what I call the real animal communicators can do, you know, they'll tell you all kinds of life stories. And, you know, people who know the animals say, well, they certainly got that right. So I know that they're good. Me, it's much more simple, but I do get messages from the animals, and I know that there is a communication that goes on. And I think it's just would be the kind of thing where people could very easily learn how to be a better communicator with their animal. Um, and
Like
by the
showing them
way,
a word picture, you're saying?
yeah, it's kind of like you say in words, but you're also visualizing what you're talking
Yes.
about with them. So
I
if they
can
get
give
the
you
pictures,
I can give
yeah.
you an example of that. Midnight, that an animal communicator taught me. And Midnight, he always wanted to run out the front door. He was an indoor cat, but he was obsessed. And it just did not help to be all these words, you know, Kitty, no, don't go out, no. And an animal communicator said to me, just picture your front door, communicate with him, and put a big red X through it. And just show them, no, you're not
Yeah,
to run out the front door, because I didn't want him to get out into traffic, etc.
right,
And they're like,
right.
just instead of using all these words, just
Yeah.
use the word picture. So that was, he
Yes.
showed me to do it.
Yeah, that's it's excellent. And I was going to mention too that one of the free webinars for people who join my association, I just got it set up for Martha Norwalk to do and she's the woman who has the radio show, Martha Norwalk's Animal World. She's going to do a basic animal communication webinar in my for my group. So people who join for $10 can have this. Course that she's going to do on basic communication. It's a one night thing on a Wednesday, December 11th, 7 p.m. Pacific, and about an hour. I think people will get a lot out of it.
And how do they find out about that, Nels?
Well, if people go to my website at healingministryforanimals.com, what they would do to get a membership was there's a button that says quick response. And that they can basically, if you want to talk to me about anything, hit that button. And then it'll ask for your name and email. And, you know, what do you want to know? In the what do you want to know part, just say, I'd like to be a member so I can attend your workshops. And that's all it takes. And then I'll send you the link to join, and we'll get that taken care of.
And that's
And
a
so, and as I mentioned, I'll be doing a workshop Wednesday night. Um, so that's 2 days from now.
Perfect.
And that's one for resetting yourself and getting yourself out of fight or flight. So if somebody was really interested in that one comes around about once every 2 or 3 months. So if you don't catch it this time, you can catch it later.
And that's a big deal because so many people do have stress to the point of it's PTSD. I used to have it with a specific loud noise. And when I was driving, if there was suddenly an air horn, you know, any kind of big noise I wasn't expecting, I mean, I was on the ceiling of that car, you know, just in a second. I'm like, whoa, I got something to reset here.
Yeah,
So, because that's not, you know, I mean, normally you notice it, you know, you might look around, but you're not normally on the ceiling of the car like that,
right.
of the car like that. And you know, that's what we're talking about, where your fight or flight, you know, it's gone to the point where it's like a PTSD type of response.
Yeah,
Those
people
are
have.
miserable. It's exhausting.
Oh yeah.
Um,
That's one way you can tell if you're in fight or flight is, do you have automatic like knee-jerk responses? They might be emotional responses where if somebody says a certain thing, you just go off. Or there might be something else more like what you're talking about. But if you have a something that just seems like a knee-jerk response and you're like, what happened? That's fight or flight.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Well, Nels, thank you so much for what you've shared today. This was wonderful. I really, really appreciate it. Anything you'd like to add, or Greg, anything additional questions or comments from you?
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. I was just getting ready to pull something up. No, Nels, I really enjoyed your stories and fantastic. And I
I, I
basically,
was I was remembering one thing that you asked me that I didn't really answer.
okay.
And that
Yeah.
was, something about, I think it was something about when did you first learn, or, you could do this kind of work or whatever. Well,
Yes.
I remember when I was a kid, I just I would see auras and I had no idea what they were. My mom kept taking me to the eye doctor because I'd say, "What are all these things, that are hovering around people?" And she'd be like, "Oh, well, we better take you to the eye doctor." And they discovered I had some issues, but the aura thing never got solved because it was, a completely
It was a
different thing.
spiritual gift.
Yeah, right. And I was very sensitive to people. I had some other interesting talents finding lost things. I don't do that anymore. No, now I lose them. But but back then, for some reason, people would say, "Oh, I've lost this," and I just picture in my mind, and I could see where it was, and we go get it. So
Wow.
yeah, I had some things going on that just clued me in that I wasn't quite like the other kids. And I remember my dad working on a dachshund and not able to help it. He was trying to do adjustments. He was a chiropractor, as was my mom. And I could just tell he wasn't working on the right thing. I didn't know for sure what the right thing was, or I might have helped him out. But I just knew that this wasn't going to work because what he was doing was not the problem. And so yeah, I had this kind of different energetic awareness, I guess, that a lot of people didn't have. And I eventually figured out that, yeah, that was me. I was not quite the same as the other kids.
That's so cool that you were able to figure that out. You stuck with it and you didn't let people in your life talk you out of your gifts. So, and that you're fully in them now. That's really great.
Yeah, I love actually. I love that my life and it hasn't all been wine and roses, but it has always been a path. If I'm straying from the path, something will come along and knock me onto the path again. So yeah,
Wendy and I know that very well.
yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for being with us. And Greg, why don't we bring the PowerPoint back up and start to wrap up here?
Yes, here we go.
Okay, so please visit my website at wendyrosewilliams.com, and there you'll find the events tab. And there's different events that I offer that are fun, uplifting, very affordable group events. We just did this past Saturday a live channeling with the Ascended Masters and Angels, and that's always a really special 90 minutes together. Also have one coming up on what's my purpose and how to meet and connect with your spirit guide, because those are two of the biggest questions that come up the most often. And also, my latest book, Regression Healing 2, Joe and Marilyn, is now available in audiobook format as well as paperback and on Kindle. So you can find it at on Amazon as well as on Audible and through other book resellers. And there's a lot of energetic healing that comes forward from that book. And thank you to Greg, because he's the person who sound engineered it for me and got those files so they'd be able to pass muster with Audible ACX. So I really, really appreciate that. So thank you all. We so appreciate you being here with us. And join us again on December 9th will be the next Waking Up Spiritually podcast. And we're going to have a return special guest, Debbie Buss. Debbie was our first ever guest, and she'll be walking us through some of the astrology and numerology for 2025. And that's always just a popular program. It's going to be at a special time of noon Eastern time because she's over in the UK. And we have linked our YouTube channel here as well as our website, which is wakingupspiritually.com. And you're so welcome to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll know when there's a new podcast available. Or if you prefer to get your podcasts via Apple iTunes and the other podcast apps, that's wonderful too. And you can find us there under Waking Up Spiritually. And we so appreciate your ratings and reviews, because that helps other people find us. So visit Greg at his website, which is Greg, Gregg, Kirk, KIRK.com, to join him for his wonderful programs and to learn more about his book, The Gratitude Curb, and visit me at my website, which is wendyrosewilliams.com. And Nels, your website again, is it healingministryforanimals.com?
That is correct. And my my YouTube channel is just Healing Ministry for Animals on YouTube.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because just proof is in the pudding. And when you get to see Nels be hands-on with these animals, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to just see them feeling better and getting back to their old selves.
Yes, that's just my motivation for doing it. Besides making a living, it's just beautiful to be able to see that.
Absolutely. So
Nice.
thank you both, and thank you so much to our listeners. We appreciate you being here, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.